Hey, welcome to Uniquely Lutheran for our beginning of our year in January. And I am Al Ernst, and along with the pastor and the chief operating officer of, I just gave you a new title.
Yes, now you've got to live up to that.
That's
title.
right, of New Life Lutheran Church. Jeff Gross, who also, I can't get rid of this guy because I run into him in the parking lot when I'm getting ready to go off and do a gig on Saturday, and then to top it off, I open my mailbox, and what do I see? A postcard with Jeff's picture right on the front of it, leading us through the Holy Land.
Wonderful, Brian. That's a tribute to our producer, Brian. Because
putting your picture on a boat, I'm not sure it's a tribute.
It's getting the word out there.
Could we have picked?
Getting the word
I don't know.
out
Could
there.
we have picked something? But you look very happy and dynamic with the little collar on.
You could have taken 26-year-old Jeff from North Dakota and put that picture on, and everybody would sign up.
Well, I mean, now both of us are very happily. All three of us are very happily married, so none of us would visit those dating sites. But my running joke on that is that why do all of these people put like pictures of themselves when they were, thin and in shape and everything else, and then you have the big meetup, and then you're disappointed. Now, if I was going to do this, I don't ever have any plans to, but if I was going to do this, I would put the absolute worst picture of myself I could find, so that if the person was interested and met up, they would go, "Man, you've lost weight. Look at how good you look." See, I would be going the exact opposite direction, because if you have kind of George Santos your picture, at the beginning, then you meet them in person. I mean, you're already toast. I mean, you're done.
That's right.
And like I said, I have friends in the comedy world, of course, that are young and are doing. I don't even want to get into that rabbit hole, but that whole thing.
It's a funny rabbit hole.
Yes, but I do not understand it in the least. I mean, in the absolutely, meeting up with somebody, whatever, but these people that are looking for husbands and wives and long-term relationships and all this other stuff, I just don't get how you can do this online.
I do not envy them.
No,
I don't know how there are people that say, "Boy, I wish I was back in." It's like, are you kidding? You couldn't pay me to go back there.
No, I don't want to have to be signed up for 9. Yeah, me, but
no way. But it's a different world too.
Yeah, but again, I would be the exact opposite. I would be putting the most, ugliest. I don't want to go creepy, because then you never get it. But I put the most unflattering pictures of myself on this, and then if somebody was interested, and then we met, then they would go, "Oh my goodness, you don't look like your picture." Now, if I did one of my old comedy pictures and I put that there, they're going to go, "Oh my goodness, you don't look like your picture," but for an entirely different reason, which is like, get out of here. It's like everybody says, "Oh, you should use that for your comedy picture." And I'm like, that's when I had a full head of hair. I mean, I looked, you got to be who you are.
I did have a trick. It's kind of like that when I was a young person, and if I probably was single at the time, and my apartment would be pretty. I'd clean it up. I'd clean it up really, really well. And then when somebody would come over, I'd say, "Man, you met me at a bad time. My apartment looks like dirt." And they say, "Wow, if his apartment looks bad like this, I can't imagine what it looks like clean." And the fact of the matter, that's as clean as it ever got.
Okay, so I have to throw one more rabbit hole before we start with our prayer. See, this show's gonna be too long today, because we just had some of our dearest friends from Alabama, who was my big brother and the Big Brothers program growing up there. They came down to visit for 3 days, and just had an absolutely wonderful time. However, I was directed by certain other members of the family that this house had to be scrubbed from pillar to post. Okay. Now, my question is if they are really your friends, what friends of yours come in to your house with maybe like a white glove or something and walk up to your shelves that they really can't see, and then they run their fingers across it and go, "Oh my goodness,"
No friends of mine.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that whole part of it is just such a complete waste of dust your shelves because you want to dust your shelves. But
Right.
if you're telling me that because some company is coming over, that I have to get the most intricate corner of the shelf in the living room by the television set, if my friends are making a judgment on that, like, I don't think we can be friends with him anymore. Look at it.
No, that's a good litmus test for friends.
Yeah, well,
Come to a moderately clean house and see how they handle it.
Yeah, I have never, like I said, in all my years, none of my friends, even friends I don't consider friends, I don't ever believe have come into the house and gone, let's do an inspection before we actually sit down, because we want to see, did you do this? Did you do that? So anyway, needless to say, and my friend, my family, I should say, Ken and Paula, who are not pet people, totally, completely, and utterly fell in love with our two new pups, with the Spice Girls, and there was a lot of things we were going to go see and do, and they're like, we can just stay here can we take the puppies for a walk? And I'm like,
wow,
have at it, go have at it. And,
wow.
And last but not least, and then I promise we'll do the prayer. If you have not seen it, this usually is our older demographic. Go to the theater, just like the old days, and go see it. I saw a movie called A Man Called Otto with Tom Hanks, and I have to tell you, was absolutely what a fantastic movie. It was based on a book that was of either, I want to say, Swedish.
Yeah, A Man Called Ove.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And
I have that book.
Yeah, well, I am borrowing the book to read that book, but I want to see. But from the people who read it and came with us to the movie, Ken and Paula, they said it stayed relatively close to the book, only put it, in the United States as a space. But once again, all you got to do is say the word Tom Hanks in my mind, and usually, his movies are going to be fantastic. But this one was just phenomenal.
One of his best.
Yes, I would.
Okay, well, that's
10 stars, and we're not even a movie rating service. All right, Jeff.
Thanks.
Please, let's say a prayer.
Sure. Great and heavenly Lord, as we come to you, as we reflect upon the mysteries and some of the challenges that come with living on a broken world and being a person of faith. We thank you for healing our broken hearts. We thank you for healing our broken nature. And we pray that you may continue to come and heal us as we stumble along into and out of trouble, in need of your presence, in need of your guidance, in need of your love, and most importantly, your grace. And we ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Well, Jeff, I'm glad you started our show, and please excuse all our little rabbit holes that we went through at the beginning. With that, I'm gonna present something to you, and then I'm gonna ask you a couple questions and also make a quick little tribute. There is an ex-professional boxer who was a Golden Gloves champion. He came out of Sandusky, Ohio, moved to Florida in his 20s, was a pro boxer, had a great career, retired, and opened up a boxing fitness gymnasium, which is really no more than that looked like something out of a Rocky movie. Basically, those of you that may have ever come and visited our church, it basically looked like the combination of our studio here and our storage trailer, storage shed put together that he threw a ring in the middle of, put heavy bags up and speed bags and all the boxing equipment and everything like that, and was actually known as one of those, I would call him one of those characters in our area, Sarasota. His name was Tony Spain. Tony took me on right as we sort of came back to Sarasota, and it was very interesting being a big guy looking for boxing lessons. And of course, in his great sense of humor, he says, "Now, are you looking to learn how to box, or are you trying to be one of the heavy bags?" So of course, I mean, and he meant it with all fun. But whether you were big or small, whether you had a disability or a challenge or anything, Tony took you on. And Tony definitely reminded me of the old gravelly voiced character of Mickey in the Rocky movies, only that he was younger than him, but he still had that voice. Yeah, you had to do this. And I still I have to tell you, I spent 2 or 3 years before some health challenges of going there probably, and when I was in town, at least once or twice, and sometimes 3 times a week, either doing private lessons or as classes. And you just saw this Heinz variety of people from of all races, of all genders, of everybody who came in, and it was just a really unique family. And as I've kind of hopefully finished up on my health challenges and gotten a little more stable, I gave him a call, would have been a week ago Monday, wish him a happy new year, and said, "Hey, I really want to set up some lessons and kind of slowly get back into it." And he's like, "Yeah, we've been waiting for you. Come on over." And apparently on Thursday of this past week, which would have been about January 12th, he was cleaning his gym. Nobody was in there afterwards. Unfortunately, had one of those, what they call widowmaker heart attacks at the age of 55. There was nobody there, and was found the next morning. And it was a real
I'm really sorry to hear that.
Yep, a very, very sad situation for many of us. And we all were able to get together at the gym on Sunday and talk about Tony and some of our funniest and most heartwarming times over there. He was a single guy, wasn't married. I know he was there taking care of his dad, who had dementia. I don't know about brothers and sisters. I mean, he was just one of those guys and I think we've all run into them in life. They just appear, and you don't really know much about their backgrounds except what they occasionally let you in. But most of it is always about coming in and hitting the gloves, and I have to tell you, I think it had, I do not think my health challenges with my heart and my lungs and the things that kind of came on after this, I do not think that without his ability to help me be in a little bit better physical condition, and I have a feeling that those challenges would have been much greater than they even were at the time because of his fitness. And let me tell you, he didn't forget about me. He constantly, we talked probably every other week. And when I was appearing locally, he would do everything he could to come over and see the show. And he always laughed because my comedy routine was always about learning from Tony, and you learn everything. And I was eager to not go in and have a fight, but I was eager to go in and spar. I wanted to be able to spar. And he finally told me, I think you're ready to go in there and spar. And I was so excited about it and bought new headgear and everything like that. And got into the ring, and knowing from entertainment, I had what they called one of those adrenaline dumps. I mean, just and I mean, even before I got into the posture to start, I can remember already feeling like I was what we call in the business, I was blown up. My heart rate was so high, and I was breathing. I couldn't catch my breath and everything like that because I was so excited to be in there to spar. And as that situation happened, luckily I was in there with one of the other coaches, and he kind of knew, but he was throwing the lighthearted kind of jabs and uppercuts and things like that, and they're like, "Ow, get into your defensive posture." And the only thing I could think of at that point was I never experienced punching and thinking that somebody was going to punch back.
Oh my goodness!
When you're doing a bag, that's one whole thing. But but there's somebody actually punching back, and they said and so my defense is what I used to call the standing fetal position, and I would I'm covering up to the side to hold my leg up, and they're like, stop it, take try to get your head in, and then they go, "Al, you got to punch, you got to throw some punches," and I'm like, well, if the other guy would quit throwing punches, I'd be happy to throw punches, they just all cracked up. It was just this tremendous kind of funny experience that I had to learn that there is truly a fight or flight syndrome. And basically, after going through some sparring sessions, of which I then did, probably a few dozen after that, you learn how to do things like control your breathing, think on your feet, do the thing that you realize you've got that fight or flight syndrome coming on your body. How do you handle that? And it was just, I mean, not only did it help me with my boxing skills, and it certainly helped me with my entertainment of being a comedian, but it also just helps you in life, because I can still see those times where I will get into that fight or flight panic mode for a moment, and the instinct of what I learned from boxing would kick in. So Tony, I'm gonna miss you more than I can tell you, and here's to you. And I'm glad the second half of your life, he, as a professional boxer, just like a professional entertainer, had many how do I want to call it, opportunities to be doing things that in a lot of the regular world probably weren't the best choices, but they were in our business. A lot of those things just kind of get shoveled in front of you, and before you know it, you're in some circles that you don't want to be in. But Tony, I love you, miss you. I know I will see you someday again, and in your honor, I definitely rehung my heavy bag and my speed bag in my trunk in our garage yesterday, and started getting some things cleared out. And with you or without you, I always know you're going to be with me, even if I'm training at my house. So anyway, just wanted to.
Very nice tribute, Al. I'm really sorry about your loss, though, and the loss of other people too, because obviously his life lessons went not only to you, but lots of people who stepped through his doors.
Well, the coolest thing is that if you all look up on YouTube or anywhere, a boxing training apparently has some kind of cognitive effect on Parkinson's patients. And Tony was the first one in Sarasota to open up totally free of charge a Parkinson's boxing program, of which these folks who have the severe, even the milder forms, but the severe Parkinson's come over and they get to tape up and they start learning how to throw punches correctly into the bags, and And there's something that's scientifically proven that the cognitive connection of that really benefits them, as well as I can tell you, he worked with kids too, and he didn't work with the kids that were just the athletes. A lot of kids, you don't need to go out and try to start a fight, but if you put yourself in shape and you learn basic techniques, it's just like the reason you put somebody in maybe karate or jujitsu or anything else. You're able to handle your teens and your kid years with a little more self-confidence.
Right.
You're not out there trying to provoke anything, but you know that if something does seem to happen, you feel like, hey, maybe I have some tools,
Sure.
some things that I can handle. So,
absolutely.
So he was a great guy in all those ways. But circling that all around with our too much time taken up on that part of it, because we are about being Lutheran and Christian. I really wanted to bring up the idea of the Christian walk and violence. And the reason I say the word violence is because it is violence. And as some of you know, I was involved with professional wrestling. And yes, that is I can promise you, doing some of the things I did, yes, we all knew who was going to win. Yes, we pull punches and moves, but yes, it really hurts. I mean, there is no way that you can be thrown out or land out on a cement floor outside of the ring with a bunch of mats there and things not hurting. So, but there was some wrestlers that became kind of born again people, and they actually formed a wrestling organization called the Christian Wrestling Alliance, and they would be doing church testimonies, and they would come to church and set up the ring and do matches and things like that, and then end up doing their testimony and all those kind of things. But to me, again, we're all talking about violence. Now, our Savior, our person that came as a baby, all of the things that we've heard and seen about him was, if someone hit you on one side, turn and let him hit you on the other side. Everything about him was nonviolent, and I was taken back by the Buccaneers Cowboys game last night, because I've converted into 4K on my television, of which I didn't ever think of as a non-TV kind of person. I never understood until I saw what 4K looked like, going, wow. I mean, you can see the beads of sweat. I mean, it practically puts you on the field. But the thing I noticed in honor of the Martin Luther King holiday was that here's these football players that on their helmets, on the back of their helmets, said something like, be the love, or be love, or I forget totally, but there was all these little inspirational messages on the back of their helmets. And then they come out of the huddle and they get into a line, and basically they purposely get into a car crash.
Sure.
They're violent. Boxing is the same way. There's a famous boxer who's a world title holder who puts MOG on his trunks, which is man of God. He's obviously, I'm not questioning his Christian credentials or his ability to be saved. But what I am want to go to you as a pastor and say, how do we line those up?
How do you reconcile violence with faith?
Right.
How do you reconcile?
Right.
Well, there's always been that tension. Probably, and I don't want to sound controversial or provocative when I say this, probably the most violent book that's ever been written is the Bible. There's a lot of violence. And it's funny you mentioned wrestling. One of the best metaphors in the Bible is Jacob, who wrestled with God. And God took his hip out of joint, and he wrestled with a broken hip, basically. and was able to at least pin the manifestation of God. And he said, you will now be called Israel, which means he who wrestles with God. So the word Israel literally means he who wrestles with God.
Wow.
So there you've got professional wrestling right in the Bible. Right in the Bible.
That is so funny.
And it's not only in the Bible, but it's really central to an identity of an entire people. The people who wrestle with God. And it talks about that kind of relationship and the candor and the honesty and the integrity of the kind of relationship between a people who have been hurt and who've been persecuted and yet have somehow or another overcome the violence that was always placed upon them, whether they're being taken away in captivity or whether they be victims of the Holocaust. You can't ignore the fact that it's there. It's there. It's there. And you know, we would say is Jesus turn the other cheek. There's lots of ways you can look at that. Not all of them are pacifistic.
Okay.
One of them is to understand that turn the other cheek is an act of defiance. When you say to somebody who slaps you on one cheek and you say, okay, go for this one, you're really putting that person in a position where they're going to dishonor themselves. And you actually won the fight. You basically won. You won here, and you said, you can go ahead, you can hit me. And then I've heard fancy ones where if you slap somebody with your right hand, you'd never hit anybody with your left hand because you defile yourself if you did that. Turn the other cheek, you force somebody to hit you with their left hand. Whatever the case may be, it is not the same as roll over and play dead.
Okay.
And that's an important thing. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. discovered, in honor of him, and I'm glad you brought him up. I wish I would have spent a little bit more time on him on Sunday. He was a person who did not roll over and play dead, but yet without engaging in acts of overt violence, he was able to change a lot of violent minds. And that kind of passive resistance is a model of how do you encounter violent people who sick dogs on you and fire hoses with nonviolence. That's certainly not the same as being passive, and certainly not the same as rolling over. It really is actively engaging, in a very particular way. And here's the thing: it was effective. Right. That's a question I say. What's effective? And I can say he was effective.
Okay, well, so how do we then justify war and the killing and all those things? And we have chaplains that are in the military, and they're quoting Bible verses, but of course I know they're quoting quite a number of things from the Old Testament that are, there were many violent encounters of, raising your shield and your sword and all those kind of things. So tell me more. I'm really
well. Let me tell you right off the bat, some of my favorite fellow pastors that I've ever had the good fortune of getting to know and love have been chaplains. And they're the gentlest people you've ever met in your life. Although, of course, they have to have a little bit of moxie. I mean, they're in a position where they're surrounded by things that are not always pleasant, but they've been humbled by it, and they are the calm presence in the midst of people's who are going through really tough times. And it takes a very special person to be a chaplain. And so hats off to them. I don't think anybody likes violence for the sake of violence. I don't think anybody likes war for the sake of war. I think we've come to grips with the fact that we broken human beings are going to be violent and there's going to be war. And now the question is, how are we going to deal with it? How are we going to cope living in a broken world? Some Christians have chosen pacifism as a way to encounter it, which in some ways, and I'm not being critical here, is to withdraw from the world.
Right.
You really can't be engaged with the world until you come to grips with the fact that it's a broken place. And I think we as Lutherans and other Protestant faiths and Catholic faiths and Orthodox who have put many a chaplain out on the front line understand that we are engaged in a broken world. We acknowledge the fact that bad stuff happens. But they're the first person, that person who's injured is seen. Is that gentle, kind, loving person on the field who loves the Lord. And I think the wisdom, you talk to a chaplain, the first thing they're going to blow you away with is their wisdom. They got a lot of street smarts. They have to.
Right.
They have to do their job. And so I have total respect for them. And I do not, and I know some of my colleagues would criticize and say, you gotta some of them will say, if you're just capitulating, you're giving in to the system. And I say, I beg to differ. No soldier enjoys war, but they're ready. Just like your friend who teaches kids the confidence of being a boxer. They're ready.
Right.
If the situation arises. There's a huge difference between someone who starts a fight and someone who's ready.
Right.
And that's what I think we Christians are. We're ready. And I think we're in a position where when we do come across things that are tough and things that are hard, we've got the tools. Like you said, Tony gave people the tools to be a good boxer. Jesus gave us the tools to be a good Christian.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, we will. I don't want to stop here because I want to ask you one more question. I think that helps me gather a little bit more.
And I'm not trying to shoot from the hip.
No, but wasn't, there were some violent quotes from Jesus, were there not? Talking about raising your sword and doing some things. I felt like in his descriptions there were some very.
I did not come here to bring you peace, but to turn mother-in-law against daughter-in-law, mother against father against son.
Right.
Yeah, I think even that being said, he realizes he was in a position where that literally happened, where if you live in the Roman Empire and your mom is a Christian and you're not, you're living in a situation where you might report your mom. There is an awful lot of broken families because Jesus gave an alternative to the status quo. And this created a lot of rifts. And in truth, it's quite violent. It's quite violent. It's sort of like, by acknowledging violence, are we saying it's okay? I don't think so. But we're not going to pretend it doesn't exist either.
Right. Well, and also we in many places we play violent our games, our entertainment. They weren't Christians at the time, but what was the entertainment of the ancient Roman Empire? Was the gladiators and the games of all these.
Significantly less noble than the noble art of professional wrestling.
Right. But these guys were. And that wasn't just faking an injury or getting a pulled muscle. Basically, you were going in and literally fighting to the death. And many of these games as the gladiator. So, but let me push you up a few centuries, and we'll wrap it up with this because I really want to understand the what you think or what you acknowledge the justification of it. And I'll give you a little backstory. One of the reasons is because one of the Lutheran universities that my father attended and I've taken some classes at online, of which I follow, which is Valparaiso up in Indiana. They, for all the time up until 2-3 years ago had always been the Valparaiso Crusaders. That was their logo, their mascot. And suddenly somebody got the whole thing. And I don't want to get off on the rabbit holes about debating names of sports teams and mascots and everything else, but they thought that symbolized a bad part of Christianity. And now, unfortunately, now I say this because if you would have come up with a cool name, I could have stayed with you. But we are now the Valparaiso Beacons, so we're a lighthouse. I mean, who cares? I'm sorry.
Sure.
If I'm gonna be a sports team, I don't want to be the lighthouse. I guess that's much better for for a theological seminary or something. But
Sure.
that doesn't hit me. That doesn't hit me like the Michigan Wolverines do.
No, it's not
something like that.
intimidating. It's not very intimidating.
No. So, but we were called the Crusaders. We always hear about this thing called the Crusades. I see people on horses with big Christian crosses on the front with the swords and going. How do we? I mean, were we literally at some point in our Christian history converting people to Christianity via violence, via a threat of death? Is this what was going on? What was that all about?
There's a lot of violence on both sides of the unfortunate chapter called the Crusades, and it is certainly a can of worms that we're not going to be able to put the lid on just yet, and maybe we can open our door to probably talking about it next week.
Well, give me the basics. Give me the quick basics.
We'll always call into question the motives of the people who started it, because
who started it?
Well, it was bigger than just a person. It was a movement, and it did not end well. It did not end well. It did end with a lot of violence, but also an expulsion of Christianity in the Middle East. But also a lot of innocent people in the meantime being hurt and harmed in the name of Christ. I actually would say that was not the world's worst choice on Valparaiso's mind to lose that as an image. But of course, every alumni from Valparaiso would take exception to that, probably.
Well, it's just because.
I think at the very least, having the conversation was a good idea. It was a good idea to really sit back and say, is this us at our best? And I think it's fair to say, no, this was not us at our best. And it wasn't even just Christianity versus Islam. It was Christianity versus Judaism. It was also Christianity of the West versus Christianity of the East. So there were Christians that were caught in the crossfires of other Christians.
Amazing.
So looking back at that, calling the question, was the Holy Lands being threatened by the Saracens? I don't know if we'll ever adequately be able to know the answer to that question. But was it us our best? Is that our proudest moment? No, I don't think it's.
Well, I guess I always thought the Crusades were that we were going in there to forcibly turn Muslims and Jewish people into Christians.
Let's go back to my original question when it comes to Martin Luther King Jr. Was Martin Luther King Jr. effective?
Yes.
Yeah. Were the Crusades effective?
No.
Yes.
All right. Well, with that, it brings me a whole nother set of things that we can talk about.
I love this. This is great.
Yeah, we have lots of.
I really think opening the door to having a healthy conversation about brokenness that manifests itself in violence and how we as Christians cope with it is time well spent.
I agree.
Time well spent.
And I think we will be actually delving much more into this because I find it truly fascinating. I'm finding more things. And again, I have no issue with the questioning of a college mascot being the Crusaders. Only thing I'm telling you is please go back to your marketing committee and give me something other than a White House. Okay.
There's my mascot, a corn cob. Cobber.
Well,
Concordia College Moorhead, best mascot.
Yeah, well, I mean that would be great. Be great for a minor league baseball team.
It'd be bad if he came nose to nose with a beacon.
That's true.
He'd become popcorn.
Yeah, well, I got my buddy Ken came down. He lives close to Huntsville, Alabama, and their AA minor league baseball team are called the Huntsville Trash Pandas. And the reason that is because they call raccoon. There's a huge raccoon population in that area up there that gets into everybody's garbage and stuff like that. And and the nickname for raccoons at least in northern Alabama is trash pandas.
Okay, bring a picture of a trash panda.
I will. I'll bring. He got me a shirt. So,
wonderful.
So I have to do that, folks. I am so sorry that we veered into all these crazy areas, but I can't wait for the next few weeks because we are now getting into one of my personal favorite times of the year, going into Mardi Gras season. For those of us that I know, I'm like the only one in this area that truly gets it and celebrates it. But then as we go into Mardi Gras, we go into Ash Wednesday, and I still say, folks, it's a very difficult transition for me that not 3-4 weeks ago, we were celebrating the birth of the infant savior, the Prince of Peace in a stable. And yet now 6 weeks later, fast forward 33 years and a whole lot of stuff. Suddenly we are going into the final months of Christ's life and then into the crucifixion. The church count, I know I'm just being way too OCD about it, but it just drives me crazy in that respect.
Well, you got me all pumped up for next week, so we're ready to go.
We'll do some crusades. Brian, thanks for hanging in there. I don't know how long we went today, but oh my goodness, way too long. But I hope you enjoyed it. And on behalf of Pastor Jeff Gross, I'm Al Ernst, and you're watching Uniquely Lutheran.